Joyce Hinnefeld, a member of Lehigh Valley Monthly Meeting, is the author of the short story collections, Tell Me Everything, and The Beauty of Their Youth, and the novels In Hovering Flight and Stranger Here Below, along with other stories and essays. She is an emerita professor of English at Moravian University here in Bethlehem, where before she retired this year, she taught writing classes featuring story exchanges with incarcerated people at the Northampton County Jail and Muncie State Correctional Institute. Now, Joyce has taken elements of that class and tailored it for a project here at Lehigh Valley. She began working with a writing group early this year, and today you will hear of the experience of the story of that group. Joyce will facilitate this session in which participants will discuss the project entitled Creating Spiritual Autobiographies in Partnership with Incarcerated Women, a Lehigh Valley Monthly Meeting project. Thank you so much, Joyce and the writing group.
Thank you, Louise. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So, friends, just a couple things I'd like you to keep in mind. We're going to hear from participants in this project from Lehigh Valley today, each of whom will speak pretty briefly about their experiences. The participants are Mimi Lang, Susan Giordano, Nancy Johnston, Shannon O'Donovan, and Debbie Orben. Shannon is in Ireland and traveling somewhere and going to be joining us, I think, from her phone in her car because she's going into Donegal where she doesn't have great reception. So we'll see how that works out. So during a sabbatical in the spring of 2019, I worked out plans for story exchanges between students in a class I taught at Moravian University, then Moravian College, called Writing as Activism, and people who were incarcerated at the Northampton County Jail. I was inspired by the work of Lehigh Valley Meeting Social Concerns Committee, which had been addressing issues related to mass incarceration for a while by then, and also by several county officials whom I met at a meeting of Northampton County's Reentry Coalition. And I wanted to pursue a model for these story exchanges developed by the New York-based organization Narrative 4. And I really recommend taking a look at their website. There's a link in the resource document. I did some training with them in Philadelphia that spring to prepare. So these happened in the fall of 2019 at the Northampton County Jail over a series of 4 evenings when I took students, drove them in a van in the pouring rain one night. And then it was unbelievably powerful. I mean, it's hard to describe what happened when we did these exchanges in person in the jail. But of course, I really wanted to continue with it, but then we all know what happened in the spring of 20. Suddenly, it wasn't possible to go in person to Northampton County Jail. And to my knowledge, I think that still may be true. And they didn't really have the online capabilities to make this happen. So through a connection I have with someone named Bonnie Winfield, who's known to a number of us at Lehigh Valley Meeting, she is the founder of an organization called The Journey Home in Easton, Pennsylvania. She's done art and meditation-based programming with the women at Northampton County Jail for many years. And she's connected as a result with a lot of women who are incarcerated throughout the state, and particularly at Muncie State Prison. And that's how I became connected with the remarkable Heather Lavelle, who is serving a sentence of life without parole at Muncie. And she has been my partner in every series of exchanges that have happened between my students, and in this case, between friends from Lehigh Valley at Muncie. She's the author of an article called Prison as Exile, which appeared in the September 21 issue of Friends Journal. And there's a link to that in the resource document as well. She assembled a list of 25 women at Muncie who were interested in communicating with my students in the fall of 2020. using both US mail and the prison online messaging system. You may know that those who are incarcerated in many institutions now have access to iPads, and they can engage in a kind of email system and communicate with people that way. It's expensive. It's, nothing is free for them or for those attempting to communicate with them from the outside. But it's clunky, and we might talk about that a little bit, but it's a way to stay in touch in a relatively frequent fashion. So anyway, that's 25 women. Well, I had 25 students in that class. The word was out from the previous fall. I mean, it was over-enrolled for a writing class. There was a waiting list. Students were just incredibly curious about this, hungry to learn, frankly, about the experiences of incarcerated people and to communicate with them. So the online and written exchanges were powerful in a different way. But I'm still glad I did them. And we did a similar sort of thing in other classes I taught, but then I retired. But I didn't want those relationships to end, of course. So what to do? Well, how could I maintain those dear and important to me connections with these many women at Muncie? So when in doubt, we all know you turn to the Quakers, who will step up and do the job. And so that's how our pilot spiritual autobiography project began. This project combined exercises that built toward spiritual, or I like Mimi's term for what we did. She calls them holistic autobiographies, which I think in some ways is a better term. It combined those exercises with communication with partners at Muncie who did some of the same exercises, and in some cases shared what they wrote as well. We drew on 2 books, which are listed in the resource document: Dan Wakefield's The Story of Your Life, Writing a Spiritual Autobiography, and also Mary Pfeiffer's Writing to Change the World. And we met to share our work and experiences with our Muncie partners on several occasions in the spring and early summer of 2022. So today you get to hear from the marvelous writers who participated. And remember that excerpts of everyone's spiritual autobiographies are available under Life of the Meeting on the Lehigh Valley Quakers website. And I think you've gotten a link for that, and it of course appears in the resource document as well. One other thing I want to mention, and then we'll get started. Please note that in that resource document, there's a link to a TEDx talk from a number of years ago from Muncie State Prison, and it's called The Lady Lifers, This Is Not My Home. We don't have time to watch it today, but I can't recommend it strongly enough, and I hope you will watch it on your own time and ponder the reality that we live in a state, one of the very few states in the US, that continues to sentence people to life without parole, something that I think we as Quakers need to be mindful of and perhaps working in concerted ways to combat. So with that, I'd like to welcome Mimi Lang to unmute and get us started.
My name is Mimi Lang, and I had no idea what a spiritual autobiography was. But we were kindly instructed by Joyce, who told the story of her students, which you already heard today. We read the books and we did some of the exercises in the books. And I'm going to go through one of the exercises with you today, so you have some idea what we're talking about. I have a few limitations, basically a brain tumor, and so I missed a lot of some of the things I could link to the prison, the people in prison. But I have heard from Tanya, and we have shared some things. I was out for a little while and I couldn't do stuff, but now I'm back in, and I'll tell you that exchanging the spiritual autobiography with somebody at Muncie provided me with an amazing perspective about how people can develop as an inside person. That's what we call people in Muncie. They're the inside people and we're the outside people. Such struggles that Tanya had to survive for 30 years in jail. Such insight into how to adapt to life inside, developing spiritual maturity and the wisdom to become a spiritual mentor, and taking so many classes to become a counselor and work on a degree in counseling. All this while she's in prison. I mean, it's really amazing. Tanya is a constant inspiration to me, and I think of her also as I hold her in the traditional Quaker light. Now, one of the first exercises and introduction to being a spiritual autobiography person, one of the first exercises is called I Am From. And so it has little hints along with it. So every line says, I am from Elizabeth and Albert, John and Mary, Mary and Bill, that's my parents. I am from Pennsylvania, Bethlehem, Christmas City, the scene of an Advent and Christmas celebration, from Monocacy Creek, Lehigh River, and the Delaware. I am from the White House on the corner with my dad's dental office in the front and a long hill on Linden Street, perfect for roller skating. All 5 kiddos had their teeth fixed with our dad humming away at any distress. Willow tree for great climbing in the backyard. Only boys to play with, lots of football and baseball. 2 broken bones and I had to stop. I am from meat and potato eaters with lots of vegetables and bacon for breakfast. Fried cornmeal mush with maple syrup was a great treat for breakfast or on nights when Dad was away. I am from Mary, my quiet mama who managed her 5 children with the loving help of my dad when he was not preparing peace or golfing. We were the big kids, my brother Tony and I, and the little kids, the 3 younger children, 8 years different. Mom did lose her temper now and then, no doubt a result of fatigue and fried, grouchy kids to keep from destroying the house and one another. I am from Dad with a great sense of humor, a family of 7, 5 introverts, Dad as me as extroverts. Somehow the dynamics worked. It was a place of love and serious spiritual intention. We had a sacred devotion to Catholicism with reservations about indulgences and a few other practices. I am from Catholic Mass every Sunday and sometimes during the week. It was a debate about family of Catholic value. My grandmother was a constant presence in our lives, mostly for the good. Her opinions were sometimes hard on us. My favorite toys, a Raggedy Ann, very raggedy, blue Sprint bicycle, received on Christmas 1948. Loved riding that bike all over town, through the country too. Big Buick station wagon for all of us, called the Blue Goose. Hung out as a kid at my friend Cecilia's house. She only lived a few blocks away, and we were constantly riding our bikes and making believe we were bareback riders. I am from hiking at Dunfield Creek in the Poconos, surrounded by lots of Democrats and people who cared about voting. My dad loved reading to us, especially to the little kids. He was a big Uncle Veggie fan. He also loved the poems of James Whitcomb Riley, Little Orphan Annie, and The Bear Boy were the 2 that we loved. Otherwise, I read Lucy Maud Montgomery's stories of Anne of Green Gables and all of the nurses, books about nurses in the library. That's because I became a nurse, by the way. About music, my parents played records, big bands, Bing Crosby. They would dance to this music in the monotone room in the basement that we got used to hearing. My own sweet dance unfolded against the cast of Dad working across the lawn in his new office, Mom staying home with the responsibility to provide whatever we needed. New pajamas, here you are. Cookies for the Girl Scouts, here you are. Here you are. A headdress for the percussion, here you are. It was a dance unfolding all around me as I came into figuring out how and where I fit into the visibly possibilities presented to me. Please excuse me, I happen to have a brain tumor which sometimes interferes with my speaking clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. And next we'll hear from Susan Giordano.
This project was the highlight of 2022 for me. First of all, it included writing, which I love. At times, writing seems to be the time when my inner being grabs hold of a pencil and starts sharing from her perspective. So the project had me right there. Then there was the specific assignments. I've always wanted to write a memoir, but you know how that goes. It never gets enough mass to break up daily life. But this project did. Then there was the camaraderie. As we began to share our experiences and our writing, we got to know each other so much better. We realized all that we miss by just seeing each other at meetings. Really, I totally recommend this for any meeting members who would like to get to know others in a much deeper way. Normally, we get to be with each other as if we were icebergs above the water. This project helped us experience and share what was below the waterline. I so honor Joyce Hinnefeld for designing this project and the perfect timing of having her retire just when she wanted to pass it on. What a gift to each of us as individuals and to our community. And as if that were not enough, Joyce connected us with women who are incarcerated and were doing the same assignments. Who could even dream up an opportunity like this? We get so tangled up in our lives and our daily struggles, we have no idea how our lives compare with those whose lives have taken a completely different track. The woman chosen for me, a woman named Nicole, grew up in poverty, living part of the time in an abandoned building. She was very depressed and wanted to die, so she engaged in risky behavior and has now been incarcerated for 18 years. When I heard that, I shuddered about our culture that had only that to offer a fellow citizen. I am in awe of what Nicole has done with her life. For instance, she realized that people who are incarcerated either became bitter or better, and she determined to become better, and she is succeeding. Have I ever exhibited that much courage and determination? She has a very strong spiritual core and personal relationship with God. This is the rock of her life, and she is also helping others. As part of her work behind bars, she is helping other inmates learn how to use Microsoft Office, including Access. She knows Microsoft Access well enough to teach others. And she is also part of the Penn State tutoring program. So she is tutoring another woman in math. This spiritual autobiography project is a gift beyond words. Not only has it provided the tools to go deeper into who I am and deeper with some of my Quaker community cohorts, but it has given me a relationship with a person whose challenges are almost otherworldly compared to mine. The biggest challenge for me is to share my own spiritual autobiography with her. as I feel so overprivileged. I think this is an important experience for some of us who are not incarcerated. I am involved in a group called End Mass Incarceration. In that group, I have learned a lot about the injustices of our criminal justice system. One of the biggest things is how little most people are aware of how that system treats our fellow citizens. The old modalities of punishment and lock them up and throw away the key is very outdated with all that we have learned about human psychology and personal growth. I could not recommend an adventure more highly than I am recommending the spiritual autobiography project designed by Joyce Hinnefeld. It may be the highlight of the decade for me. And not to forget, I now have the workings of a spiritual autobiography and know what other directions I need to include so that I am on my way to my memoir that I've always wanted to write. Thank you, thank you, thank you to Joyce. You have stretched my life way beyond what I could have imagined. Writing, sharing, comparing, relating across huge cultural differences. Who could ask for anything more? And I'll share just a couple of things Nicole has shared with me. When I asked her if I could share any of her writing, she said, "Yes, you may share anything I've written. I'm very open about my life and who I am. And I've learned over the years that telling my story has been one of the things that has helped me to heal, as well as to help others." And then she says about her tutoring experience, "Even though I am tutoring her in math, I give food for thought sprinkled here and there. Sometimes it's nice to hear encouraging words that help us believe in ourselves." She was saying about how her tutoring student was always second guessing herself. Here's a thought about the whole criminal justice system. Yes, restorative justice should be instituted instead of punishment on top of punishment. People in positions to do something about this do not understand the harm being done when there is no incentive and no restoration. Merit hearings, she's signed up to get a commutation. Merit hearings for commutation are in 3 weeks. I'm excited to find out what's what and be able to give my mother some much needed good news. The one thing she desires most in life these days, as she gets older, is to see me home before she dies. Oh, and this is her thoughts about time. It's funny how in prison, all one wants is time to hurry up so that the day of release is finally here. But then when I reflect on how things were when I was home, how they are now, and the aging in my face when I look in the mirror, I don't wish for life to go by so fast. I just don't want to spend any more time in a cage. And then I told her of a project I was involved in, and she said, education is the key, just the youth is our future. Prayerfully, we'll get some people in those legislative positions that can and will make a positive adjustment to the criminal justice system and prison reform, where it is not solely about punishment, but rather rehabilitation and help. Everybody has a story. We are all more than the crimes that we committed that landed us in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I forgot to mention Susan's connection can be a little wobbly, so she kept her video off. I'm sorry we couldn't see her see her face, but that was for our benefit. And Nicole's commutation hearing, I believe, was delayed. It's a long, drawn out process, but it's in the works, and we hold her in the light and keep her in our prayers.
It was supposed to be in October, and then it was moved to February.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Okay, we'll hear next from Nancy Johnston.
Thank you, Joyce. My contribution is to give a little insight into what are we going to do now after we've been through 10 months of working with each other and Joyce's tutelage to capture our spiritual journeys? And are we going to continue communicating with our inside people at Muncie? So my experience of combing over 70 years of my spiritual journey revealed the highlights and peak memories, including zigzags along the way, as well as crossroads and complete change of beliefs. One of our assignments was we had to draw a roadmap of our spiritual journey. I feel like I have just barely captured the chronological developmental journey from child, teenager. One poignant memory from my I Am From story and pivotal experience was being baptized. As I grew up in the Baptist church, I was baptized by immersion in the baptismal font in the front of my church. And I just felt like Jesus was right there with me. It was just a very powerful moment. So those kinds of experiences also emerged. And then as a young adult, and then as a woman finding Quaker meeting, and then being a mother and now grandmother. And so I feel a need to go back over the path and look for evidence of process. And I told Joyce that I was sort of like, okay, I wrote this. Now, what grade did I get? And she laughed, being a teacher. I did examine several sources that were on the internet of people who have spent some time looking at what are the stages of spiritual growth. And one I discovered, and this is in the resources that Joyce mentioned, is Michael Bernard Beckwith. And he is described as a new thought minister at the Agape International Spiritual Center in California. And it's a trans-denominational community. And he names 4 stages of spiritual growth: the victim, the manifester, the channeler, and being consciousness. And that they break down into terms such as things are happening to me in that victim stage. Things are happening by me in the manifester. And things are happening through me in the channeler. And things are happening as me in the being consciousness phase. So I want to spend some time analyzing these stages in my own experience and get some deeper understanding of my soul's living up to my soul's potential. And that's one of Dr. Beckwith's books. The other piece that I said I would share with you is my biggest surprise, or surprise as I encountered this woman on the inside who was sharing with me and my experiences on the outside. I had not anticipated that my inside person would be calm, serene, filled with grace. She has actually provided me support and woman-to-woman advice when I have spoken to her of my struggles, and also unconditional caring. And we have shared that back and forth. And her name is Sheena. And we both experienced beatings from our fathers as young girls. And we each have lived in West Philly in different times of our lives, of course. She is so amazing of a person. She's getting her master's in counseling, like the woman that Susan described. and she tends the herb garden at the Mincy vegetable garden. I'm hoping, I actually have written her a letter and she owes me one, so I'm waiting to hear from her as to how things are going. And I hope we can meet in person someday, and at the very least talk on Zoom to see each other's faces. And we even have spoken of being at each other's funerals. So it's very poignant of a connection. Not even counting the insight that one gains at this age in their lives to what being a Quaker means, what have I contributed to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, give that just a moment. Okay, we'll hear next. I think Shannon is with us. Are you with us, Shannon O'Donovan?
I am. I am in Ireland and by a mountain, so let me know if I'm starting to go in and out, and I'll maybe take the picture off. So hopefully this will get through. My inside person was Heather, and unfortunately, I was trying to do something from overseas, because this is where I live, to Pennsylvania, and she just wasn't getting her post, which Joyce and I both felt was very odd. So we tried to do something through the text messaging system, and it was having to go through Joyce to get there, and I was sort of like, this is just ludicrous. So unfortunately, it kind of never got off the ground. I sent her my the poem of me, and she sent me a very nice reply back, but we never did the spiritual autobiography piece. But yeah, that piece to me was a real piece of learning as well. So what I thought I'd do is read my initial letter to Heather, and the poem that I sent to her, just to kind of give you an idea. So I wrote, "Dear Heather, when I said to my husband I was going to be doing a spiritual autobiography in partnership with a woman incarcerated in Muncie Prison in Pennsylvania, he said to me, 'Why? So you can tell her how great your life is out here and make her feel bad about her life in there.' My husband is from Cork, and well, they're plain-speaking people, e.g. completely tactless and rude. After giving out to him for being plain-speaking, I also reflected that he had a point. Because no matter how rubbish I think my life is, and no matter how gracefully and purposely you live yours, there is an inherent imbalance in this exchange. So I'm going to need your help in telling me when, not if, it will be a when, I stick my well-meaning foot in it about absolutely anything. Like now, for instance, too much honesty? But I really do value honesty over polite seething and gritted teeth any day of the week, and I hope you do too. Also, just a heads up, my spiritual autobiography should probably come with the health warning. It is pretty grim at times because that's how childhood and adolescence was for me, a time of surviving a lot of crazy and inappropriate adult behavior and then getting out as quickly as I could. Lots of therapy and many years later, I find that speaking about this and them is still a difficult and wrenching experience, as I discovered when trying to write pieces and share them with my fellow Quakers for this spiritual autobiography. Their stories were a lot more upbeat, to say the least. But at the end of the day, this is who I am, and this is where I come from, and this is what has made me into me, and I'll not apologize for that, because at the end of the day, I actually quite like the me I am today, warts and all. So after that build-up, it better be good, eh? Here it goes. I am from Joan and Butch, Orla and Milton, Margaret and Frank, from the swamp of South Florida and live oak Spanish moss covered trees of North Central Florida, from the bridges that split in two to let the sailboats through and leave traffic tangled up for hours. and the giant flying palmetto bugs hiding in the sawgrass, cottonmouths, rattlers, black widows, brown recluse, the intercoastal, canals, rickety fishing boats, and fancy sea cruisers. I am from cream of mushroom soup casserole eaters, fresh off the vine watermelon, honeydew, and cantaloupe eaters, and Pepperidge Farm microwave meals eaters. I am from book and music lovers, alcoholics, middle-class racists, atheists, and Southern Baptist evangelists. I am from family secret keepers and ancestral evil deeds never talked about openly. I am from bless your little old heart, come here and give me some sugar. Pretty is as pretty does. That school made you think you were smarter than you are. You're trying all right. You're the most trying person I know. I know why you don't come home anymore. Marriage is a serious institution. Don't expect anyone in the family to talk to you again if you leave him. I am from we go to church, but we don't believe in God Methodists. You're going to hell if you don't believe like a Southern Baptist. From doctors, dentists, teachers, engineers, dietitians, shop owners, housewives, the Junior League, Daughters of the American Revolution, and Daughters of the Confederacy. Women who proudly erased themselves, even their birth name, when a man put a ring on their finger, and Southern men who believed women, children, and property were one category. I am from a tire swing hanging on the giant live oak by our house. Dorothy, my imitation Victorian China doll, dressed in the scraps of mother's pink floral silk dress. 7 rescued white cats with yellow eyes and ears that burned and bled in the Florida sun. Christy, my miniature black and gold hen turned feral and living in the woods with her illicit brood of savage chicks. Fireflies, skies of the deepest sapphire blue, heat lightning flashing and thunder booming, so loudly I hid in the pantry with my sister because it was the only room without windows. My own sweet dance, unfolding cast of tubing down the Crystal River, sitting in the sinkhole making mud cakes and little gray clay pinch pots, watching the hummingbirds at dusk sip from the hibiscus flowers growing by the front porch. Everyone voting Democrat for the Georgia peanut farmer, Jimmy Carter, because he was one of us. Reading Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys, the Bobbsey Twins, Gone with the Wind, Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, All Creatures Great and Small, listening endlessly to Mother's Music, Johnny Mathis, Gilbert and Sullivan, the Kingston Trio, Simon and Garfunkel, ABBA, hymns and old folk songs pounded out on an upright piano and shouted out by a tone-deaf mother with great enthusiasm. My own sweet dance unfolding against a cast of bitter, rigid women, kind neighbors, and absent but well-meaning men. Take care and hope to hear from you soon. Shannon. When we were doing the sort of meeting before this meeting and trying to decide timings and what we would say and whatnot, the group who I think Susan kind of mentioned, we have gone very close, I think. And they said, well, you know, just because the correspondence with Heather didn't work out, it didn't mean that there wasn't a piece where, you know, we got to know each other. And that was a real gift, I think. And it was an unexpected gift because you kind of go into these things thinking, well, this is what I'm going to get. This is how it's going to be. And I felt like I didn't get what I thought I was going to get, but I got something else that was just as precious. So I was delighted. Thank you, Joyce. And thank you.
And finally, we'll hear from Debbie Orben.
Thanks, everyone. So grateful to be part of this group. I enjoy writing and often reflect upon my life. So writing from a spiritual point of view was a wonderful opportunity. Still, the most meaningful aspect of this project was getting to know my partner, Yvonne, who has been incarcerated for 39 years. I was amazed to discover that instead of despair and dread, after being sentenced to a life in jail, Yvonne found faith and hope in her spiritual beliefs. She became a person who lives each day to its fullest, helps others, and continues to grow and learn in so many ways. Right now, she is taking psychology courses to get her bachelor's degree. Here is just one excerpt from Yvonne's spiritual autobiography. I enrolled and participated in numerous seminars, workshops, programs, courses, and groups. These were offered through the chapel. With each, I learned so much more about myself, things I had forgotten along the way. For starters, I am a good person who made drastic choices and decisions. No one is perfect. We all make mistakes. What's important is learning from those mistakes and not repeating them. Secondly, even though God had forgiven me, I had to learn to forgive myself. It took me many, many years to do so. I also started living by those values that were installed in me at a young age. I realized my grandmother knew exactly what she was talking about. If only I had followed those 10 commandments, I never would have thought about committing any crimes against anyone, let alone acting on those thoughts. I should have taken more heed to what she was trying to teach me. If I had done so, I would not be suffering consequences today. As time went by, I eventually became a fish member, in which I performed specific duties each Sunday during the worship service. I joined the choir, the chime bell choir, and the special choir. I participated in ETA courses and earned an associate's degree in Christian counseling. My spiritual guides have been there for me every step of the way. I am grateful to have had so many chaplains support me through the years. It was truly a blessing. I learned that I can't do it alone. It's time to finally allow others to support me. If only I had done this years ago, I would have realized the other options I did have. Yes, I have a lot of regrets, but today I realize I have to put it all in God's hands. He makes a way out of no way. I have to trust and have faith that He will see me through. Each day, He walks with me and talks with me. With His strength and comfort, I was able to endure the last 39 years. I know He will remain by my side forever. I may be here, but I still have plenty to be grateful for. Yvonne has a beautiful voice, an exceptional spirit of faith and courage. We continue to write back and forth, and I'm grateful for her friendship. From her, I have learned that life can be savored and meaningful, even behind bars. Kind words and encouragement are limited only by our imaginations and not by our circumstances. Yvonne taught me that forgiving others and ourselves is the most difficult and important of life's challenges. Yvonne has given me much more to me than I am able to give to her, as others have said before. We were just so surprised at how much we are grateful to our partners. Her faith in God enables her to stay strong and make every day count. One of the prayer cards she sent me says, "You are precious to God." As others have said before me, a very significant part of this project was having the guidance and leadership of Joyce Hinnefeld. Joyce is a former clerk of Lehigh Valley Monthly Meeting, a retired professor from Moravian University, and an accomplished author. She is also a caring and compassionate teacher facilitator. She gave us clear guidelines and encouragement every step of the way. She was able to help us navigate intricate and sometimes impossible roadblocks so that we could communicate directly with our Muncie partners. It was a joy working with Joyce and being part of an inspiring group of women, both Quakers and those in prison. I would encourage those interested to contact Joyce to learn how you might participate in future spiritual autobiography projects. I am grateful I had the opportunity to be part of this life-expanding experience. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, everyone.
I'll let Wendy be our guide, or Louise, or both, for because I know worship begins pretty soon. So,
Well, thank you, Joyce. Joyce, I have a question. Is this ongoing or has this project come to completion?
Well, our group, I think we feel that I don't know that we want to say we're done. Because I think everyone feels like there's so much more to say. They've written a portion of what they'd like to write. But we were meeting in May and into June, and then sort of decided over the summer that we would take a break. And then got together to put things together for the website and for this talk. So I don't know the answer to that exactly, Wendy. I mean, it's something I'd like to do again. I'd like to, I don't know how to find time for everything, of course, but I think it's nice to do it with a relatively small group because there is this wonderful bonding that can happen. So I'm sure we'll get together at least one more time on Zoom, because that way Shannon can be with us. But maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll all go to Ireland.
Can you hear me, Mimi?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mimi.
I wanted to say that I finally, after some problems, finished what I think is my spiritual autobiography, which ends at age 72. And but I'm 83 years old, so I have a lot of years to add to my spiritual autobiography. And I think that I'm interested in doing that for my own sake or whatever, because it's such, it gives you such insight into things one hasn't considered before. So I think it's going to be ongoing.
Thanks, Mimi.
Joyce, we have a question. I had actually seen Chio's hand up first. So Chio, if you could ask your question.
Yeah, I was hoping that you might be able to tell us a little bit more about the exercises that you used.
Yeah, hi Chio, thank you. That's I saw your question in the chat. Group members join me in remembering this. We really did kind of work our way through the exercises that Dan Wakefield lays out. And what's nice is he breaks this down: childhood, adolescence, friend, mentor, guide, and then a roadmap of your spiritual journey. And I believe for childhood, we started with the I Am From poem, which I took from Mary Pfeiffer. That's a pretty common exercise, but she has a wonderful map for how to do the I Am From poem. And then we did the childhood, was that when we drew pictures, y'all? I can't read. Yeah, we drew pictures, which was just a nice way to kind of jar memory and begin sharing. For adolescence, he has a wonderful series of questions that I won't read through now, but they kind of prod you to remember who you were as an adolescent and how you felt about people, your parents, of course, but friends, and maybe sort of life-changing events that happened to you as an adolescent. The friend mentor guide asks you to think kind of broadly about who's been a spiritual mentor to you. And those were interesting to think of who has really influenced us in that way. We had good discussions about that. I feel like we drew pictures again then. That's my memory of our mentors. And then making the map, with what were significant points along the way, which served, I think, at least for some, as a kind of outline for beginning to write about each of those stages. Wakefield is really good at articulating that a spiritual autobiography doesn't need to be narrowly understood as your religious training, or that people who have shaped you may or may not have been people in faith traditions, and he opens it up really nicely. So I think the book was a good tool. I don't know if others want to weigh in on that.
Carolyn, your question?
I was wondering how and who chooses the women who are incarcerated, and how that relationship happens that you are able to be in touch with them. But is there vetting process or those who are interested, or how does that happen?
Well, I kind of did it. I mean, I had connected with these women, as I mentioned, I mean, altogether more than 25 women at Muncie at various points, some of whom have been much more communicative and engaged with the exchanges with my students. And then some of whom I just am still in contact with somewhat frequently. So we had a small group, and I knew who might really, I also talked with Heather some about, you know, who might be interested in this kind of process, this kind of writing. And so she, I think, helped me think through, I mean, the hard part when you have 20 some women that you'd like to make this available to is deciding who to ask and who to contact. So really, it sort of narrowed it down to people I still communicated with pretty often, who had been engaged with my students in a pretty meaningful way, and who I knew had a kind of spiritual way of understanding themselves. And then I just thought, oh, I'm really happy with how it worked out, actually. I kind of felt like, well, you know, these Quakers sort of, and I always thought Yvonne should be with Debbie. I played matchmaker, you know, and I'm not going to lie, I kind of played matchmaker. So it was, and I'm just delighted with how it turned out, because boy, I think it would have worked no matter who your partner was, honestly, but the bonds were strong.